Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.
Hi, I'm Himani, the co-founder of Partners in Upbringing, a parenting podcast and a sister podcast of Global Indian Series. For me, being a woman need not be any different than being a man. We have an important role to play and we are wise enough to recognize that fact. It's time we see ourselves beyond being equals and celebrate this day just by being ourselves. Thank you.
This is Anissa Singh from the US. Being a woman is to be all-encompassing. We are fierce, yet compassionate, fighters of love, strength in a room of fear. We naturally adapt to be who is needed through all the highs and the lows. We are nature's melody.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Ngorima. I'm listening in from Botswana. For me, being a woman means being a pillar of strength, pillar of guidance, and a symbol of unity and hope.
Welcome back to the Global Indian Podcast, home to the greatest conversations and the official platform for people of Indian origin. Yes, let's face it, we are everywhere. Now, you know, every single week we plunge into the human experience behind our perceptions of identity, take a second look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the big conversations. This week, as you can tell, we'll be having a look at Women's Day. More importantly, the human experience found behind our perceptions of identity of womanhood. As you heard from our guests from around the world, we asked a very simple question now. So, well, what does it mean to be a woman to you? And the results were absolutely fantastic. You can listen to some of the quotes right now.
Hi, my name is Idi Amin. I am an ambassador for Global Indian, listening in from the US. Being a woman to me means resiliency at its best. It means to be a lioness.
Good evening, folks. This is Kiran Sharma from Malaysia. The late R.K. Lakshman, cartoonist of Times of India, was once asked, why did you only create common men and why not common women? He smiled and replied, women can never be common. Women are strong, independent, bold and passionate, and they should be celebrated not just this day, but every day. Happy International Women's Day to every woman out there, especially Alexia and Siri, who are actually the only women who listen to men.
Now, I'm not sure about you, but it's definitely given me a very different perception of Siri and Alexa. But jokes aside, I think the reality is this year, especially given everything that's happened with COVID, everything that's happened with unrest across Europe as well as the rest of the world, we have to start really looking at the identities that we plunge on each other and question what it truly means. What is this perception of humanness? Now, my next guest is the remarkable Pragna Hay. Pragna is an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur as that. She's a model. She is a custodian of truth. She's been doing a lot of work in terms of bringing together societies over these notions of identity. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with her for dinner. During that conversation, she opened up about her own experiences, and granted to her, being on this platform can never be easy, especially with the conversation that she had. So this is a very raw, open and honest discussion that looks into her own life, the idea of womanhood, and I believe a very key message for future generations to understand, not only to preserve our posterity in terms of ideas, but also to help educate and enlighten people on the true impact that decisions have. A massive thank you to Pragna for coming on, and we kick up the conversation where I'll ask her to kind of plunge me in deeper into what this identity of womanhood is in the South Asian context. As always, I'd like to say a massive thank you to all our dear supporters, many of which you hear from now. And if you too would like to be involved in our 50 Shades of Brown discussions, well, it couldn't be easier. Come to the website, www.globalindianseries.com. There you can listen to this podcast and the entire repertoire of discussions so far. A massive thank you to all of you who have supported this and sending in your voice clips. And before we kick off, over to the news.
Here are the headlines for the Global Indian Series 9th of March 2022. The Indian government has managed to evacuate 294 Indian students from the Ukrainian city of Sumy after Russia agreed to a ceasefire. The Indian government said that all those evacuated had left safely with the convoy. However, Ukrainian officials say an evacuation route from Mariupol was being shelled in violation of the ceasefire agreement. For more than a week, an Indian doctor in war-torn Ukraine has been holed up in a basement at home with his 2 pet black panthers and a jaguar. Kirit Kumar Patel, who bought the 2 cats from Kiev Zoo, says he will not leave home without his pets. He has lived for over 6 years in Severodonetsk, a small town located in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. India is reeling from the rising price of oil. The war in the Ukraine has led to a huge price rise. India is the world's 3rd largest consumer of oil after the USA and China.
Hi, my name is Divya and I'm co-founder of the Global Indian podcast. Before you get to today's show, I've got a quick favour to ask. If you've been enjoying our conversations, I'd love if you could take just 1 minute to leave us a review on the platform that you're listening to us on and share our work to friends and family. It helps us out a lot. Word of mouth is the primary way that we grow. Thanks for your continued support.
Hi, my name is Nestor Alfred, CEO of St. Lucia Citizenship by Investment. Think freedom. What comes to mind? Freedom to explore, to travel to any destination for work or play. Or is it freedom of expression? Being surrounded by the globally minded, those who care for society and environment. Every year, people from around the world apply for St. Lucian citizenship because they realize that real freedom is based on choice. Discover more about St. Lucian citizenship and how it's helping global Indians achieve more.
My name is Chitra Stern, and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martiniale Resorts and Martiniale Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martiniale, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID. Have a great day.
And just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move. Get up and just move.
Society can impact us a lot. And I think in our community sometimes, society has this vision of what a woman is, what a woman should be, and the dutiful person that a woman should be. So anyway, I guess my story probably started when I was in my mother's womb. She was wanting to give me away. She'd already had 3 children at this time. And I don't know what their situation and circumstances were at the time, but I guess that's where my story starts. And then I had an arranged marriage at the age of 18. It was all very, very sudden. I didn't know what was going on, what was happening. And the person I got engaged to was in another country. And I met this person very, very briefly. And before we left that country that evening, I was engaged at the age of 18. And within 3 months, I was married and I moved out to a country I did not know. To live with people I did not know, into a lifestyle I did not know, and suddenly I'm becoming a daughter-in-law. Now, in our society as well, being a daughter-in-law, with that comes, again, so many expectations. You are going to be an amazing cook, you are going to be an amazing housekeeper, you are going to be an amazing socialite, and you are going to be dutiful. And so you've got all those expectations. And at the age of 19, having grown up, I guess in some ways a little sheltered and being very naive at the age of 18, it was a very difficult adjustment because you're literally just thrown out on your own, not knowing a lot. I didn't even know how to cook very well at that stage. So these are all things that I had to learn as I went along. And then within just months of marrying, I found that my husband was having an affair. And that kind of really knocked me because I'd been brought up in some ways with the traditional views that, when you get married for life. And if something goes wrong, it's normally the woman's fault. And, maybe you weren't good enough. And I think that good enough tends to sort of stick to women a lot sometimes as well. So I kind of discovered that he was having an affair. It was only by chance that I came across this discovery. We then had a long conversation because I was ready to leave. But then on the back of my mind, there was also this thing about disappointing my parents, bringing dishonor to them, etc. Then I kind of decided, okay, fine, maybe I should stay. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I should make a go of it. And rightly or wrongly, I decided to have a child. Now, also, when I found him having an affair, one of the things that I did after we had that first conversation was I took off my Mangalsutra.
Yeah.
Because in my heart, my marriage, before it had started, had died. Because what he did was kind of, to me, really unforgivable. But there was this part of me, this traditional part of me, that felt marriage had to be for life and I had to make the most of it and carry on. So I did. And looking back, maybe it may have been the wrong decision because having a child doesn't repair a relationship. And I guess I did it, for those reasons. But anyway, and I guess before I say much more, I should just give you a little bit of a description of narcissism. Narcissism is kind of the concept of excessive selfishness. It's linked to vanity. It's linked to self-admiration, the feeling that you are more superior than others. And you create this world around you that perhaps isn't quite real. And you're lying not just to yourself, but to others to create this life. And the person, obviously, that I was married to had a very narcissistic character, so very manipulative, etc. Okay, we had the first child, and the first child was born within the first year of our marriage, before the first anniversary. 2 weeks after she was born, the mistress came round and wanted to have a conversation. And this was quite an interesting conversation because she wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with my husband at the time. And I wasn't obviously going to allow that. I stood in the room. And it was really fascinating to hear what she had to say because he had told her, it was like an old Indian movie. Yeah. He had told her that he had to marry me because I was married to his brother and his brother had died very tragically and he had no option, but had to feel pity on me and hence had to marry me and could not marry her.
And you're in the room listening to this.
Yeah, I was just gobsmacked. I've just delivered a child and this child, my daughter, is 2 weeks old at this time. Anyway, that aside, she kind of followed me around for a while, etc. Wouldn't let it leave us alone. I then got pregnant with the second child. I didn't realize at the time I was pregnant. At this point, my husband and I weren't really talking to each other much. And because of what had been going on, we were moving back to the UK because I was actually living in another country at the time.
Which country were you in then?
Canada. So we kind of came back to the UK. I got myself a job, went out to work. Obviously didn't tell work I was pregnant at the time because I wouldn't have got the job and I needed to get out of the house. Then I kind of left that job on a Friday and delivered my child, my second daughter, on the Thursday after. And I had actually even driven myself to the hospital. Also, I guess the first bit that I've just missed out as well, giving birth to the first child, my husband was actually with his mistress, not in the birth room with me. And of course, in those days, there were no mobile phones, etc. So it's really hard to get a hold of a person. But he did turn up at the crucial point just before our daughter was born. So I guess you could say he was there at the birth. But anyway, after we had the second child, I went back to work for a short period of time and realized that perhaps this was quite difficult, leaving the children with mother-in-law, because obviously she wasn't young and she was struggling with 2 children. So the decision then had to be made, and I left work and I set up a business, which was a private day nursery for children. And I ran that for a number of years. I had the third child while I was running the nursery as well. Knew nothing about running a nursery, found everything out that I needed to, started it. It was successful until we got to a point where the affairs continued. He didn't really work, didn't financially contribute to a lot. So we got into a lot of financial debt. We lost the nursery. We'd actually bought the house next door to the nursery, which is where we lived. We lost that. We then had to move away from where we were living. And we had 3 children at this point in time. And I ended up working in an insurance company in a really, really dead-end job. And thinking, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? I've got 3 children. I've got nothing to be proud of in my life. And I wasn't obviously happy in my marriage either. And I decided, okay, perhaps it's time to leave and find a different life for myself. But like in most, I guess, in Asian cultures as well, the elders of the family descended on me. Both his side and my side came over to sort of talk to me and to try and show me that what I was doing was silly. I had young children. I should not be selfish. I should not be thinking of myself. I should be thinking of the children. And you know what? In some ways, they probably did me a favor, because it made me sit down and it made me think about what they'd said and how am I going to cope on my own with 3 children? Because at that point, I still wasn't independent. I don't think I had that strength within me, but I don't think I felt strong enough to be able to do it. So I told myself, okay, I need to perhaps stay a little bit longer. Perhaps I need to change my circumstances and my life. And I remember a conversation with my younger brother. I was working in the insurance company and I'd spoken to him, and he said to me, sis, you know what you've done wrong in your life? You didn't get yourself an education. Because I married at 18, I hadn't been to uni, I hadn't any degrees. So I went home, I thought it through and thought, okay, I need to go and sort myself out. Me being me, I aimed for the highest. Yeah. I applied for medicine, got a place at med school, had to go and do a year's access course to be able to do it, which was something that they'd started for mature students. That was fine. Went over to King's Lynn, lived there for a year, did this mature students course, failed the course by just a couple of points. I needed 6 distinctions in 6 subjects, missed it in physics, which was my weakest subject. Anyway, I went home crying and disgraced because I couldn't go into med school. And the second best option was biomedical science, which is what I then went and did. But as I started my degree, I realized I was pregnant with my 4th child. Now, I'd had 3 daughters at this point, and of course, in the Asian society, that can be a bit disgraceful. You are not a good wife and a good woman unless you give birth to a son. That never really bothered me because at the end of the day, I had 3 amazing girls, and that for me was good. But my son came along 6 years later. So the first year of my degree, I'm carrying my child, and he was born in May. Mock first year exams are May, June.
Yeah,
I did my exams with sleepless nights, got through that, got through the degree, even though it was really, really tough, especially the final year, because not only was I finishing off, we'd moved south by this time. So not only was I finishing off the degree, but I was also working as a microbiologist for a company. Now, also in between all this time, whilst I was in King's Lynn, my husband had decided to commit a crime, and he was imprisoned eventually. So the court hearings were going through during the end stages of my pregnancy. So he was still around when my son was born, but shortly after that, he was imprisoned. And if I remember correctly, it was for a year or 2 years. I can't exactly remember. This is all in the past now. But he was let out for day release, when we did the Balmoral for my son and things like that. But that was a horrendous time because I was studying, he hadn't worked, we had no money, I was on benefits, I was alone, scared, with 4 children, and really sort of struggling to keep the roof over our heads and food in their belly, to the point. And I'll never forget what my older brother did for me. He came over to visit me one day and I never realized, but he opened my fridge and suddenly he just said, "Hey sis, I just need to nip out. I'll be back in a bit." And he went off to the grocery store and came back with these bags of food because he noticed that there was no food in my fridge. And I hadn't even seen that because as a mum, you always find something to make.
Yeah.
There's always something that, you somehow make. But anyway, he did that. Eventually, my children's father came out of prison. He was so lucky that he managed to get a job because I was so worried that what are we going to do with our lives? He comes out, he's got this title that he's been a prisoner, etc. But anyway, he was lucky that he got a job and we moved to the south and we moved to Newbury, which is where I live at the moment. And we sort of started anew, and I thought, this is good. We can start fresh. We can get on with life. We can do something. So I finished off my final year of my degree whilst we were in Newbury, and it was tough because working and studying all in 1 year, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, cooking the meal, leaving the house at 7 to go to work, come back, pick up the children, cook, clean, study, do a dissertation. And I was so close to giving up, but I'm so glad that I did finish. But as I was coming towards the end of my degree, I found that again, he was having an affair. And this time it hurt a lot more because it was a close family member. So I kind of had to make probably the most difficult decision in my life, which was to break up my family. Because doing this doesn't just affect me, it affects my children.
Yeah.
And although we always say that children are very resilient, they can get through anything and everything, and they can. You can sometimes leave an impact on them, which you might not realize then, but you might realize later on. So I kind of realized what was going on when we were at an engagement ceremony, and I saw him stand up and go and dance with this close family member. I saw them and thought, okay, there's something definitely going on there. So it wasn't just the sheer exhaustion of what life had been like up until that time, because living with a narcissistic character and also someone who's a criminal isn't an easy task. And I guess in some ways at this point, I was literally on my knees, but I had to make this decision. And the reason I had to make it was because I also had 3 daughters, and I needed them to understand that the way our society sometimes sees us is that women can be seen as the inferior sex. And I think sometimes in the Indian community that years ago was seen a lot more. I think now things are changing. And I had to stay strong, and I had to stay strong in my decision as well, even though I wavered at times whether it was the right decision or not, to continue, because in deep down inside me, I knew that the decision I was making was the correct decision. But not only had life slapped me so many times now, it had actually punched me, and I was literally on my knees. And then obviously going through the divorce process was really, really tough. There was a lot of times when I was told how bad I was, what I was doing was wrong. Again, elders of the family members would come and see me and tell me this was all completely wrong. And then you're on your own. You're having to make all these decisions on your own, and you're not actually sure whether they are the right decisions, but you're trusting your gut and the feeling that you've got deep inside you that, okay, this is what I am going to do. And then you stand firm by it, more so because one, for your own sanity, because what you're going through is really killing you inside, even though you're showing this exterior of strength. Deep down inside, you are dying a death. But also, obviously, like I said, for my children, because I needed my girls to understand that you've got to stand by what you believe in. So, that's what I did. But the manipulation through the divorce and everything, again, was really, really tough. I was left in the home, no car, 4 children. And the torment I had as well, and that went through all this period. And I guess in a way, I'm probably a little bit ashamed to say that I did actually attempt to take my own life as well, because I was literally on the floor, feeling like I was in the gutter. Even though a part of me knew that that was the wrong thing to do, there was also this part of me that knew that maybe everybody would be better off without me. But the strong urge inside me was the children. And I looked at the children, they gave me my strength to say, hey, don't be so stupid. You've got to live for us. So I was kind of under all this medication, etc. And one day I just woke up and I gave myself the biggest kick up my backside that I could give. Put all my antidepressant medication down the toilet, and the withdrawal symptoms I had were horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But I persevered because I knew that I couldn't go any lower than I had gotten, and I had to lift myself up. And I remember that particular week when I was having withdrawal symptoms. By this time, I'd set up a recruitment business as well. And I'd arranged with one of my clients to do some interviewing with them. I had to lift myself up and go and sit through these interviews while I was having all these withdrawal symptoms from all this medication that I was taking. But I did it. I got through it in the end. So obviously, with going through the divorce as well, there's no support. The society in those days, I am talking about over 22 years ago now, divorce was really frowned upon. And you would find that wherever you went, family members didn't know how to react to you. They didn't know how to talk to you. They didn't know how to be around you because it was still a bit of a taboo. You sort of, if you know that the decision that you've made is right, you just kind of persevere with it. You do get moments where you doubt yourself. I remember going out shopping one day, the children were with their father. And I saw these happy families around me. And I swear I could not stay in that shopping centre for more than 10 minutes. I had tears streaming down my face. I drove home and I kind of questioned this decision that I'd made. But then I kind of reminded myself why I'd made that decision. Because as a woman, you tear yourself apart because you're tearing apart a family unit that you had, and it's you that's made that decision. So you kind of blame yourself a lot to do that, but you have to keep reminding yourself why you're doing these things. So anyway, we went through the divorce process, and it was really quite funny because he'd bought himself a fancy car, lived in a fancy apartment in Canary Wharf. This family member had moved in with him as well. And he'd left me with a massive debt, no car to ferry around the 4 children, no support. And on top of that, he was trying to turn the children against me. So at weekends, the children would go and see him. They'd come back with all these amazing gifts. They've had a great time with daddy. They come back to mummy, who's disciplining them because mummy's got to get on with life, put food in their belly and a roof over their heads. So obviously that wasn't an amazing time for me at all. It was probably the lowest I've ever been in my life. And I had got the recruitment business to a point where I now had a team of people that also worked for me. And I remember driving over to my office one day, and I was parking the car, and I get a phone call from my ex in tears. And I said to him, "What's up?" And he said, "Oh, it's so sad. Have you not seen the post this morning?" And I said, "No, because I left to come to work." And he said, "Well, our divorce has come through." And I said, "Okay." Because to me, this was like what I needed. And I couldn't understand why he was so upset and crying, because he'd already set a wedding date to marry this new lady. So I almost laughed, because to me it was so hilarious that, you know, you're getting married in a couple of months and a divorce hadn't even come through. You'd set your wedding date, but okay, fine. That's what you want to do. So the weekend that he got married, the children went to his wedding, except for one child who was quite dead set against it. And I found that I couldn't stay in the country because I couldn't be around when this happened. And because it was a close family member, and there were certain members of the family that were attending this wedding as well, and I couldn't comprehend. Yeah, wherever I live is the children's home at the end of the day.
When you look back, because fast forward now, you're happily married, you're retiring, you've got this incredible career, you've done some remarkable things, and you're giving back in a huge way to society. When you look back and you hear of International Women's Day, and you see adverts celebrating International Women's Day, big speeches, you know, the simply celebrating one day in the year and still having the issues existing for the remainder should tell you all that you need to know about what it means to be human at this moment in time. But rather than me saying it, what's it like for you?
You know, being a woman has never been an easy task, because I guess the prejudices that are against women, that we are the inferior sex. But when you look at it, we're not the inferior sex. Women are strong. We can make things work. Gosh, I'm losing my train of thought here.
Take your time. Take your time.
So I guess in a way for me, being a woman is having a sense of identity, trusting yourself, trusting the decisions that you make, listening to that inner voice, which we do tend to distrust from time to time, but then experience always shows us that the inner voice always does tend to be right. Be confident as a woman. Learn to have that confidence in yourself, and not to let society or anything shatter that confidence, that meaning that you have of who you are. Accept when you make a mistake. We all make mistakes. And accept that you are not what society expects you to be. Accept that you are who you are, and who you are is what your life experiences have made you.
And you get to choose your life experiences. For you, it's the fact that you were married off. And that word is intentional. You were married off at the age of 18.
Yeah, I was.
And although it's a similar language, it's still a dislocation of culture. And you're in a foreign place and you're going through all these things. And the expectations from society, I think we tend to forget that they're not set in stone. This idea of how a woman ought to behave is only really 2-3 generations deep in our type of collective consciousness, because it hasn't always been that way. I suppose the beauty of it is that when you're born, when your children are born, all 4 of them, they had no idea what skin color they had. They had no idea what gender they had. All they knew that they were here, and they're breathing and they're looking and they're observing. But throughout life, society tells you that because you have a certain gender, you have to act this way. And we never question it. None of us do. And how foolish is that? It's like, what's your lesson that you want the youth to hear, regardless of gender, regardless of isms? Because what you went through was a human experience of sorts that was almost perpetuated by a social obligation that people are saying, this is how you have to be. According to who? I got no idea, but you have to be this certain way. So what's your message to the younger generations in terms of how to live a life?
Have a meaningful life, whatever this definition is for you. It's your definition of what meaningful life is. At the end of the day, life is beautiful. Everything is possible. Time flies by at an incredible speed. Yeah. Make it what you want it to be. Don't be fearful of the decisions that you make. May they be difficult decisions to make, like the one I had to make of leaving my husband after 15 years of marriage and 4 children later. We all have that fear inside us of whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And fear can weaken you. It can paralyze you. And that's if you let it. And fear can get worse and worse every single day until you kind of become empty in a shell and really, really lost. So listen to that inner voice that you have inside you. Go with it. Trust yourself. And it doesn't matter what gender you are. I think those are sort of the basics that
the humanistic. Yeah,
and you need to take control of your life and take responsibility of your life and what happens in your life, because all these experiences that you have, you're allowing those to happen. That whatever I went through in my marriage, in some ways, I probably allowed it to happen because I stayed. And I stayed because at that moment in time, it was the right thing for me to do. And I guess the most important thing as well out of this is don't procrastinate, because at the end of the day, life is short and it can be shaped by the decisions that you make, and it can lead you down various pathways because of those decisions that you made or you didn't make. Whether they were right or whether they were wrong, they were correct at that moment in time when you made that decision.
Yeah.
When I look back at some of the things that I did, trying to bring up 4 children, trying to run that business to keep food on the table for them, I probably wasn't the best mum because I didn't have that time to give to them. And when my children do ask me, do you have any regrets in life? And I say to them, yeah, my biggest regret is that I didn't have that quality of time to spend with you when I needed to, when you were young. And I see my eldest daughter now having an absolute amazing quality time with her children. And it's so fantastic to watch that she can dedicate that time. I mean, she's a busy woman herself. She's a lawyer and everything, but she makes time to have that quality time with her children. And I think that's so important. And I think that's where I really missed out on them.
I think that's
they've turned out okay, I
think. That's a lovely way to end it there. What a fantastic episode, I'm sure you agree. A lot of deep points made there. If you'd like to find out more about the work that we do at the Global Indian Series, well, come to the website. It's www.globalindianseries.com. And if you're part of the family, make sure you share these podcasts. The reason why we're growing so substantially is because of you. The more people we can have coming in, the larger the living encyclopedia that we create. And the larger the living encyclopedia, the more we can change the world one simple conversation at a time. Until next week, I hope all remains well. Take care for now.
Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com. Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.